Morning, Mincy. Morning. How are you?
Morning, Whaley.
Good. All right, not bad.
Well, that's the end of the Kerfuffle podcast. Wishing you all a great weekend.
Yeah. Well, they do say if you've got nothing to say intelligent, come to the Kerfuffle podcast. No. I'm it's the calm before the storm, Mincy. So I've got the Pet Shop Boys to go to tonight, and I think you know how excited I get about any kind of campness of that level.
You do have a penchant for camp two-man outfits. So Mintz and Whale, Neil Tennant, and whoever the other guy is.
Yeah.
And you also like your other favourite band. Don't tell me. He's got AIDS. What's his name? Not Freddie Mercury, the other one.
Erasure.
You love Erasure. Hey.
I tell you what, and for any of the people who are unlucky enough to be connected to me on Facebook, did you see what I thought was a lovely little post just highlighting me and my son in our kerfuffle gear? Did you see that?
I saw that. I saw it was a very nice post.
Okay, that bit's fine. Did you see the bit that somebody posted back last night?
No.
Let me just see if I can find it. It's absolutely amazing. I can't find it here. It basically said something like, "This is so lovely to see you with your pretty wife in your full outfit, displaying such happiness. I had to go and."
Oh.
He's annoyed enough that I post these things online anyway. So actually, you mentioned Erasure. Last time when was it? About 3 years ago, we went to the Erasure concert. Me and George. I thought I'd get him down there, and we were all kerfuffled up like this. And the amount of people we had, so I go, "Oh God, love that!" Well, what's kerfuffle? We said we had the support band, and it was amazing how many people bought into that live. But anyway,
it's certainly a phenomenon. Talking about massive live events, you're a little bit excited this week, aren't you? Because it's almost like conference season has started.
It is literally curtain raiser season, isn't it? So I am very happy to be PM1ing it, if that is the verb. And even more so, and actually, this is why your segues are so brilliant. To break from Erasure, Pet Shop Boys to PM1, all people need to know about on Friday is, as usual, they won't miss me, but there's going to be a definitive Lycra theme going on, because I am delighted to be promoting at that event the Great British Property Cycle that Agents Giving are fantastically launching in October. And don't worry, I've already signed you up without you knowing it, where literally all you've got to do, 1,000 people is what they're aspiring to do, to sign up in October to cycle whatever level you want to do. All you have to do is raise 100 quid. And as long as my maths, and whenever we sit in our financial meetings, I'm not very good at this bit, but if 1,000 people raise 100 quid, is that 100 grand?
So it's called the Great British Cycle. You're raising 100 grand and you're wearing Lycra at PM1.
And I am walking round with a recruitment board. Picture me if the Tories get back in. Sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face there. If the Tories get back in and national service happens, see me as the recruitment sergeant that will be walking around trying to recruit all of your children. I am going to be signing people up to get them and their businesses just joining in this wonderful, wonderful charity event. Half of it goes to the Trussell Trust, which is obviously a fantastic, an amazing charity, and the rest of it goes to Agents Giving for other events. So who's your favourite cyclist ever, and why is Lance Armstrong such a an icon for you? The Man City of cyclists. Congratulations on your seventh award. It would have to be. You are right with that one, but who was the one with the big sideburns that obviously was very much into a No, I know what you stop trying to show off that incredibly amazing growler actually that you've grown in literally what looks like about 48 hours. No. He was the Britpop cyclist. What was his name? Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I remember. what was his name? Bradley Wiggins.
Wiggins. Well, I like him because I read yesterday he's almost bankrupt and he's got to sell off his medals. So I always like people that have been there, achieved,
Bent it.
What do they say? Fail fast. So yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to try and sew all of these different things together in seamless segues. So you're at PM1. Yeah. You've discussed a little bit of politics. I think it shouldn't go without notice that not only has Rishi Sunak called an election, but the other elections that no one's talking about are the property mark elections. And
we're the only ones, unlike all that bullshit on TV where they're not allowed to talk about it or show bias. We can show bias, can't we, Mincy? What's our thinking? Who's up for what? You're far closer to this in agency world than me.
So I do know that you'll be a bit torn on this because I think for Arla, the Arla position is of course my good friend Sophie Lang. So I don't mind telling you.
Sophie Lang, absolutely brilliant, jumps on our things and is a relocation agent network. Who's the loser?
Yeah, so the loser is somebody who you also like. Ben Stokes.
Oh dear, oh dear. Oh,
you do like Ben Stokes. You see, I've torn you now.
This is like making me choose between Erasure and Pet Shop Boys. This is
Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? But I tell you what's great is I think you've got so those are just two of the candidates. Yeah. You've got other people floating around there. I know that David Votter's up for a board position.
There are other floaters. Is that what you're telling me?
So David Votter's up for a board position.
I love a lot of Votter. Got to love a lot of Votter.
Certainly, if they're choosing it on looks, he might stand a chance of getting in.
Yeah.
And then you've got somebody who I quite like, Richard Worrell. He is their he's in charge of auctions. He's an auctioneer. Yeah. And I like him quite a bit, so he's there as well. But I think there's lots of candidates that have very decent a very decent background within the industry, good knowledge, and it is genuinely hard to choose between them. But vote Sophie Lang.
Yeah, exactly, Sophie Lang.
Sophie Lang.
Can I turn it back on?
Get your Lang Wang on the thing. Thank you.
That concludes that.
I think we need a better slogan.
No, I'm going all Frost Nixon for you. You were obviously, let's say, pre-Nathan days, you were quite critical in many ways of PM.
Before they made me a trustee of the property?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to put you in a difficult place.
Separate organisations. I'm more than happy to talk. Go on.
They'd be mad to get rid of you. You're the bling. You're the muse. You're the smell of charity.
That's me.
I think that there is a real, and obviously she's just floated up herself. Hello, Megan. There's a real strength of personality coming through, aren't there, in these these elections now? It seems was it I just wasn't tuned into it? No, I was tuned into it before, but they're not quite the I don't want to be unkind to ones previously, but not quite the grayer characters that were there yesteryear.
No, I think yes. I think this sort of current cohort of, and just look at who they've had in the past few years. You've got some characters like Votter, you had Liana, you've got everybody's favourite Reform UK candidate, Maxine Fothergill, that we need to talk about that because I think that's an amazing segue as well.
And and this isn't a euphemism. I did drop a scone on her foot at the racing one day. So
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. That constitutes a marriage proposal in some counties in this country, you know.
Really?
But I do think you've got this very young, vibrant group of people coming through, and it's diverse as well. So you've got people like Harry Truman, you've got Meghan, so I guess what I'm saying is you've got women and you've got men and you've got people who are all under the age of 50, all pulling together to do something good. Not that I want to be ageist at all, but it's showing a little bit of that colourful diversity that they didn't have previously. And they're all immensely passionate.
Yeah.
I think if I had only one criticism of the property mark elections, is that unfortunately there's a little bit of voter apathy in as much as the turnout is quite low. I think it's about 5% sometimes. Correct me if I'm wrong, boys and girls.
On the elections, that's how.
Yes.
Yeah,
they've got they've got a great membership base. They've got a great potential voter base, but the people who actually put pen to paper, as it were, it's all electronic. But the people that actually vote is relatively low. And I just wonder if these positions that they were voting for were more than ceremonial, i.e., they actually had power to change certain or influence certain things within the organization, would that make people care about them more? And is that a comment on politics in general? If the people who are out there today struggling to choose between Labour and Conservative, for argument's sake, because they feel that actually it's a shower of shite, whoever you get in. Yeah.
Well, I think, and obviously we need to be at the absolute core of corrupting this. So, like they have super PACs in the States. The Kerfuffle super PAC should be there, obviously promoting the people that we want to into the positions of power. And then we can really do some special stuff, corrupting the industry and the nation itself. What do we need to, what do they call them? Those Dominion machines. Why don't we supply the voting machines for Property Mark? And really we could then ruin everything. You haven't mentioned one of the most important, most vibrant, one of the most. Where's Toby Martin in all this?
Do you know what? Hitherto, Toby Martin is yet to put himself forward in a political role. I believe he is an exec, a local exec, and he's obviously very prominent. And I would say if you were going to pick your next JFK, it would be possibly someone like Toby Martin.
Let's do the thumbs up here that sees us. Just vote Martin for Property Mark.
You heard it here first.
We started this. We just want to get paid back in the normal way, 15-20%. All those £3,000 coming to us, and that'd be lovely. That'd be nice. Okay. Well,
I think if what Megan's saying here, do you think it's less about Property Mark and all those young people had to put themselves forward, like? The members are caring enough to want to put themselves forward. And I think they're passionate. They're extremely caring. They do want to see change. And I think they are pushing themselves forward. And Sophie Lang most certainly did hear her name.
You did, Sophie, but don't rewind because I don't want the lawsuit, basically. Yes, your name was there. Can I tell you how difficult it's going to... So these good people are going to be there. And in many ways, I don't want to have to ruin Friday, but I am going to ruin Friday because it's going to get ugly on Friday, David. Do you want to know why?
Because you're going to be wearing Lycra.
No, well, in many ways, Spot the Walnut competition is going to go a long way. No, I should do that for charity as well, shouldn't I? That'd be good. No, it's going to be...
Many things you should do for charity, but possibly not that one.
Well, everyone's favourite, Mr. Phil Spencer, is going to be there.
True.
He is true. And you'll remember, I think it was one of the few agents giving balls that I didn't end up in hospital because of you. And in the auction, I bid for an afternoon with Mr. Phil Spencer to go and meet him and Kirsty, go location, and then lunch afterwards. I have to tell you now, he has not delivered on that. So now, admittedly, I haven't chased him up, but there's going to be a scene of me chasing him around the room in Lycra with my diary and saying, let's do this.
You know what? I think when Jason Lee closes his eyes and dreams about the vision of Property Mark 1 and what success, he tries to visualize success. It looks like you making a complete fiasco of the whole thing.
And that's before we've got to the after party on the boat. I've said just if there's one thing, as long as it doesn't end Marchioness style, everyone has come out of that in the best possible style.
So going from the Property Mark elections to the actual elections, you know what? I possibly care about the Property Mark elections more than I do about the real elections. What are you hearing? And is anybody hearing anything that is relevant to the actual property industry? Because although there was an announcement from Labour this week on housing, that didn't feature in any of the ridiculous debates that they've been having online.
First of all, can we talk about? Let's just talk about that. if you're talking about dumbing down politics at any level, the two formats of those ridiculous things, reducing everything down to a soundbite and a shout over, it is, I mean, it's as bad as you and me. You get more intellect out of our conversations here because we vaguely listen to each other. You should have jumped in there. That would have really made that. But yeah, I mean, it's just madness. They didn't talk for once. I mean, the changeover of housing ministers is an in-joke, isn't it, in the industry? But the fact that they keep talking about Labour saying we're going to build 1.5 million homes, well, frankly, you could talk about jetpacks for all. It doesn't make any difference. If you then don't back that up in the most important interviews you're having of the time, and neither the leaders or their number twos talk about it in any shape or form, it's pathetic.
I think if my kids were to watch the online, or not the online, or the televised debates that they've had so far, I wouldn't let them watch it because I think they'd have a horrible view of politicians and the petty squabbling. I mean, I thought that Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak were bad enough, and then saw a woman who impresses me an awful lot, Penny Mordaunt.
You like the sword. You love the sword.
I love the sword. I'm a sucker for
genuinely, I have got the greatest Penny Mordaunt story. It is going to break in the sun. I get my whaley whispers. It is amazing. And it is certainly not going live on here. But for anyone at Property Mark, get a pint inside me and I will tell you. And it does revolve around the sword as well. So good. Anyway.
So Penny Mordaunt, and she clashed particularly with Angela Rayner. Two people from very different backgrounds. Different backgrounds in terms of style as well and politics. But it was pathetic. They would not let each other talk. It was a shouting match.
Obviously, I don't. Have I actually ever voted for Labour? I don't think I have actually voted for Labour. But obviously, I think that I've been fairly clear where my cards are marked and everything else. I'm not going to vote for them again this time, by the way. But I absolutely, obviously, hope that they get in. I didn't know whether the Sunak. It's really interesting the difference in styles. The Conservatives seem to have sort of adopted, and they do have a lot of the Australian advisors, don't they, and the American political advisors. They seem to be going for that very Trumpian, appear dominant, shout over your apartment. And Starmer, whatever you feel about him, I find him dull as dishwater. But I think it's really unfair. He tries to almost play by the rules, where Sunak is just shouting over the top of him, and it doesn't make for a very. Well,
I'm gonna jump in and just say, look, I think we all know that Sunak and the Conservatives have had their day. It's gone. He's gone, and I think that he made a huge clanger by walking away from the D-Day.
He left them on the beaches.
He left them on the beaches. It couldn't get worse than that. His priorities always seem to be different. And I think even in calling this election, there's a sense that he'd like to get it over and done with so that he can get his kids back to school in time.
She's had a look. Term time in San Francisco is in August. Come on, we could be here.
You wrap it up early July. This'll do it. But
just on that, do you know that one when again, if you talk about it's so thick of it. There's him stood in front of Morrison's, which made it look like morons. There was him stood in the rain and he couldn't have a surf hold the umbrella over his head. But somebody made the point that actually they reckon he did that on purpose. You know it's raining, don't you, Mr. Sunak? Oh, I know it's raining. I am out of here.
It was the things can only get better playing in the background that to me was just like it was the best bit of all of that. It was just British pantomime at its best, but.
No. This is, I'm an in-betweener, a Lib Dem. Everything the Lib Demers have been doing just looks like you are having a wind-up. I mean, you talk about small boats. Did you see the one in Henley-on-Thames with he's totally unaware against Sunak, and the Lib Demers are going back like pugwash in the background.
My favorite, the Lib Dems at the moment, I don't know what goes on in their heads when they plan these things, but when he fell in the lake of of human sewage.
Yes, yes.
It was just a metaphor, political metaphor
Well,
gone wild.
he did it 4 times, didn't he? So you know what I've realised is that politically, kind of like I'm like Ed Davey. He turns up to every one of those hustings with like we do to conferences. He had a Jenga set with him, didn't he? One day, he's always knocking down inflatables, and he just looks like he's having a great time of it.
It's almost like they've given up on politics. It's just, we'll be in the also rounds. But
you know what? I think he's actually, I was listening to, obviously not everyone's favourite cup of tea, but Alistair Campbell made the point that, look, they don't get the coverage that they deserve. The ridiculous nature that, for years, anti-EU MPs were always on Question Time. You never got pro ones. Farage gets more bloody press than royalty. The Lib Dems have to do sort of this wacky kind of stuff to get attention, and that's just lunacy.
I think you've touched on the truth there, that the dreaded B word is not being mentioned at all. The aftermath of Brexit, the financial repercussions of it. None of the political parties are going to be talking about it. Nigel Farage coming back as the candidate for Clacton-on-Sea and becoming leader of Reform again. Well, who couldn't see that happening? But it's interesting to see how that is going to evolve, because it's going to obviously attract all that demographic. I'm going to be very polite to that demographic now.
You're talking about my mum.
I'm talking about your mum. The people with questionable political views when it comes to diversity and inclusion. The people who
it's not her fault that her village is like that. It's just accidental.
It's just a demographic. It's just the way that it is. It's just the way that it is. But what's interesting is there are some people who really, really, really believe in those values. And let's not forget when Boris stormed it in the last election.
Take it back.
It was all of those people.
You've got to question what taking it back is, though. It's such a, and unfortunately, it's such a strong. The one thing that Brexit means Brexit and everything else. There, getting a strong slogan is almost more important than the detail behind it. That's the terrifying truth about this stuff. The paucity of how the anti-Brexit campaign was. It never vocalised itself properly, and unfortunately, you saw Sunak doing this the other day, and everyone since throwing that 2K out there. The £2,000. Claim and everything else there. Unfortunately, it's that one. If you make a lie, you make it big enough and you say it often enough, it becomes a truth. I was just going to show though, but actually, Megan, you were talking about demographics. I do think you're absolutely right in Megan. The Labour TikTok thing. The only people that Sunak seemingly caught out by the snap election was his own party, because Labour really did look like they were ready to go. Some really, really professional stuff. Sunak again. It sounds like we're having a go. I am having a go. I don't have to care about it. They do all these. He's been doing all these TikToks. Did you see him in front of the whiteboard where he says, "Here's Labour's plans," and it was a blank whiteboard? I mean, that was just.
It's a meme waiting to happen.
It's lunacy. And the Labour Party came back, didn't they? And said, "Well, actually, here's our top 10 things." It's like, get your head around this stuff.
I would like to think that we can attract younger voters back to the polls eventually. What's interesting is, and I learned this week, is that Australia has compulsory voting.
And I'm all for that. I mean, I think, but they make it really easy. So you can vote electronically. You can just go to any polling station. You can even do some telephone voting and do this, get this, at an ATM. So they've made it very easy. And of course, you can spoil your ballot if you want.
An ATM.
Yeah, an ATM. Yeah. Take out 50 quid to go to the pub and then, vote loony.
It's true that when you have a system where voting is compulsory, you do have to make voting as easy as possible. And that's obviously what they're doing there in Australia. And they make a big fuss of it. It's a day off. It's not a working day. Whereas over here, and in America, we seem to make life difficult for people when it comes to voting.
Well, the Americans are disenfranchising everyone, aren't they? I mean, that's the scary. I mean, I do think, and I know we're veering as far. It's relevant to everyone. But what they did in those local elections and in the London mayoral election, where pensioners could use their Oyster card, but the youth of today couldn't. I mean, that is the worst sort of gerrymandering. That is the worst sort of, even Rees-Mogg called it out. Did you see Rees-Mogg admit? He said, look, we got it wrong. We actually stopped our own demographic from doing it. Now, when your own lot are kind of calling it out like that, you know something's gone terribly wrong.
I think the crowd and President Lang is agreeing with you there. I think we can make voting easier. I don't think we need to scare people away. I think we do need to try and make. I think we do though need to come away from this pathetic style of politics that we've got, which has become so snipey and it's become so toxic that I've got no interest in watching. I mean, Prime Minister's questions has forever been a bit of pantomime, but it's now it doesn't feel good watching people trash each other.
No, but you know what I would say is if democracy and politics is about anything, it's about mirroring society. Otherwise, it's not doing its job. It's why I think we have to have proportional representation, even if that means, you know, groups like Reform or even more extreme parties finally get a voice. It doesn't make sense for them to hide in the shadows. Now, what I think we're seeing here a reflection of is look how polarized we are as people, and social media has to take a massive you know, part of the blame on that. The ability to stay in your own echo chamber, you know, and literally just kind of, I'm only going to hear from people whose opinions I want to hear.
And I think that's the thing. I think that if you speak to that Reform generation, they'll say, oh, you know, the younger woke generation don't like getting offended. I think to a certain extent, there is a truth to that, in as much as we do not like listening to opinions we don't agree with, and we therefore take a very extreme stance on them nowadays. So there's not so much sort of debate anymore, because we instantly sort of polarize ourselves to the extremes. And you can see that with protests that happen and people trying to express themselves. It doesn't help move the debate forward. It just moves us all further apart.
Ricky Gervais has spoken about this on comedy, and obviously he loves to offend for a bit Jimmy Carr style. And you can be offended, but you don't have the right to stop other people from talking about it and everything else. And I think there's a lot. I mean, obviously you and I, we've offended a lot of people with our comedy, not least because it wasn't funny. But that point is, you know, the snowflake generation. It's almost always the people that accuse others of being snowflakes are the first to react in that terrible fashion. And what's interesting is even when my guilty pleasure is Russell Quirk, and I can admit that now. But what's fascinating is you can sit and you can, in the way that you can do with friends, and you can be sat across the table from people who are at the exact opposite ends of the political spectrum on loads of other things. You can still have a really good conversation, debate, and it can get sometimes quite fiery and everything else there. But that just doesn't seem possible in any shape or form, does it? In public discourse in a wider context.
No, I think people take it too far. We take it to almost violent extremes where they feel that they have to do things and they have to act in a manner that is going to cause damage in order to get their voice heard. And I think it's a shame. I think there is this tradition, almost British tradition, of debating. We used to do it at school as a topic. I don't know if you guys did in your posh private school that they're going to start putting
I got my fag to debate for me, but
but that really was a skill set that they taught, and it's about putting across your argument, but it's also about being able to sit there and take it when the other side puts their argument forward, because you need to pick that apart and be able to respond to it.
One big caveat on that, though, there is that actually debating can sometimes actually avoid you having a true and honest conversation. What I mean by that, your old Etonians, Simon Bradbury's nemesis, what's his name, James O'Brien on LDC, he admits himself that he was trained to do that debating, and he can win almost any debate. But has he actually won the person over to his side of the argument? And he has to say himself, actually, he admits that he comes across as smug. You look at how many of these politicians do give, politicians answers and can do all that side of things, but they're not really bringing people with them. And again, it's just like your audience, your tribe are going to say, I love that. It's look at Trump. Look at Trump. He's a convicted felon. And it was barely moved the polls at all, because everyone who was already with him says it's a deep state conspiracy, and everybody else just says, well, we knew he was a convict anyway. You're appealing, and this is the horrible thing about it, you're always appealing to these fuckers in the middle that are undecided.
So Sophie's touched on something interesting. If we started political education at school level, we can open up kids' minds to listen to all the points of views and how to become informed. Debate and discussion is a skill that still needs to be encouraged and nurtured. And do you know what? I'd add to that, financial management, we've all a life skill that all of us need.
I think what I could have done with financial management.
Oh man,
could you imagine?
They would have told you. They told you the minus side of things isn't the good side, and the plus side is better.
As a Liverpool fan, I always thought that going in the red was good.
But do you not think that when you speak to your kids that they have such an amazing perspective? Like someone said to Dexter, "Oh, if you like this toy, you can ask your daddy for one," and his response is, "Well, daddy doesn't buy the toys, mummy does." And I was like, yes, this younger generation totally are the hope for equality and change, being like, yeah, well, there you go. It's how you raise them.
I genuinely think in this country, again, I'd probably get a little bit over the top about it in terms of watching the older generation disappear off with their pro-Brexit voice, and that's not very popular. But the youth of today, in terms of their views around, fairness and everything else, is great. I tell you what is quite disturbing, though, that's not true in Europe at the moment. So maybe this is one of those things where they haven't been able to have a voice, some of the more extreme voices. And, famously, the EU has been very open about things like immigration. So you're not even having the discussion. Obviously, the European elections are just taking place. And the strong feeling is that more far-right parties are going to take a much bigger piece of the pie. And again, just as we said earlier, that's probably just reflecting what's going on in terms of the societies themselves. But do you remember going back in Question Time where Nick Griffin there was a huge furore from the British National Party. He got he was put on Question Time, and everyone's saying that this is a disgrace in the way that we don't listen to IRA people. They used to have the comedy voices. Actually, that was the death of the British National Party. He got absolutely, when you gave him the oxygen of publicity, and you could hear how ridiculous they were. They were downhill every moment from there.
So what do they call that? Platforming people, and yeah.
I think platform again. I agree.
I agree with you. The issue that I've got now is that there seems to be a platform for everybody. So if you've got back in the day, if you wanted to get on any kind of political show that was going to be watched, generally speaking, you were going to go on the BBC.
Yeah.
Now you've got people like GB News, you've got whatever they're called. I mean, whatever Russell Quirk is on tonight, and they do platform an awful lot of people that you or I would not have on this podcast, and that's saying something.
There's somebody.
We have a very low bar.
You've seen me at the bar. We have no standards at all in terms of anything else. Well, I think we've done politics there. Obviously, the world's a better place now for that, isn't it? Should we take it back to property?
Yeah, vote Sophie Lang. Wang, yes, thank you, Lang.
Kerfuffle for Lang. That's got to be the mantra now.
Do your Lang thang. Vote. Vote early. Vote often.
And I came up with the Meganator, or was it the 8? I know I probably even got that wrong. Anyway, I'm even bored of my own voice now. So let's go back to, because we probably should do, as we're 40 minutes in. We missed probably the biggest news of the week so far. In fact, no, without a doubt, is obviously the PFG deal. So Property Franchise Group acquiring the Guild and Fine and Country to turn them now into the likes of which we have never seen before. Obviously, just under 2,000 offices, I think it is, obviously comprising of the Belvoirs, the Martins and Co's,
and now you're adding into that mix a load of independents as well, which is an interesting tie-up, isn't it?
Well, I can absolutely, and look, I can absolutely see you've got Fine and Country at the top end of there. You've got You Move in that whole group now, which has the hybrid angle. There's ticks all over the place in terms of everything else. Look, and I've got to be really honest. Obviously, we're coming at this, or I'm coming at this, obviously from the Relocation Agent Network point of view. But as I've always said, I've always seen our colleagues have all the time in the world. Free McKenzie over there. I think Gareth Samples is one of the canniest players out there, and of course I think what they're going to be offering in terms of size and scale and those, imagine the supplier deals they're going to be able to leverage now, being that super group that they obviously are, and everything else there. And so I think it gets very, very interesting in terms of what's going to be going on. But I've been banging the drum. I think that was David Lindley. I saw they're talking with Sam, and go listen to that podcast. It was a really, really good insight around David Lindley.
I'm sorry, but I can't listen to any podcast that David Lindley's on, even the ones where I'm on it,
because it's too lovely.
I'm too busy looking at his very, very beautiful face.
But you know how I neutralise that? So by calling him Mini Whaley, I kind of adopted part of that gorgeousness. And he's very good to me. Obviously, he looks at me in that kind of, there's me and my dotage, and he sort of says, "Okay, Simon." And then
he's an incredibly good-looking man.
He's actually, his presentation and the business behind it, absolutely there. He's steeped, obviously, in that organisation. I just think he's very, very canny about it. But they had a really great conversation about it in terms of, again, what was going on. But I made the point just in terms of on their LinkedIn post that actually, whilst everyone's been focusing on or was focusing on the likes of Purple Bricks and the online agents, and clearly that was a massive disruptor to the industry, the far bigger thing that's been changing the industry, 4 years, has been the M&A activity, the larger corporates acquiring those, those smaller businesses, or rather those mid-sized businesses, your Gibbs Gillespies, your Northfields, your people like that. And that sort of rump in the middle has largely been sort of shrinking down to a rate of knots. And interestingly enough, I think it's about 80% of the industry is 1 to 3 office agents. They're not growing into that gap, because obviously, there hasn't been the time to do it kind of organically or from that. So,
or dare I say, sometimes the need to do it. So, growth is great. But some people have mid-sized businesses that pay them enough so that they can go on holiday a few times a year. They're putting some money aside for the kids and whatever it is. You don't need a Leviathan of a business
I remember,
be successful.
I don't know whether we'll get a cease and desist on this, but I remember having a drink with Mark Manning, and we were talking about, obviously they've become this enormous business now there, and he kind of looked wistfully off, and he was talking about the businesses that he admired. And it was interesting, he went straight back and started speaking about Ashington Page and Gareth Ashington, single office, superb business. But the ability, everything that goes on is actually within that building. The HR issues aren't multiplied out there. And I think there's a lot of people that are having that kind of, you're seeing other businesses say, actually, we don't, having more offices is not just the ultimate, doesn't have to be the ultimate goal, does it?
I suppose if you look at the EXP sort of rise to fame and all those sort of things, that rise of the self-employed agent, it's precisely that. It's that you have got lots of small, very successful, almost single branches covering most of the country. And I think that they are happy to have a scaled down business. You look at someone like who's really impressing me recently. So I'm going to talk about Katie Poor.
I was just about to say.
But if you look at I sent her a message this week just to say that I quite like the fact that she's poured no pun intended, her personality into her online marketing, because she uses sense of humor. She will, it's sometimes a little bit corny, but she turns heads with the sort of stuff that she's doing, but genuinely seems to sort of be, you don't need 30, 40 listings to make money. You need 6 or 7 sometimes, and that's all you need.
I think there's Katie's just fantastic, and she's showing, obviously we've got the view agents, the review and reputation side of things. And I think the absolute challenge for people these days is how do you compare the personal brand, combine the personal brand with the corporate brand? And Katie's showing that absolutely in spades there. Simon Bradbury obviously going down the same angle in terms of, we listened at the ICG group, they did the roadshow, and Ian Preston's obviously launching that ability to, if if you want to go down that hybrid model yourself, then he's giving you the tool set to be able to get started on that. And I think there's got to be a wider conversation that actually don't let some of your key people leave because they want that personal development or to go down that model and set up as competitors to you and be, they know how you work and everything else there. If you could actually adopt that hybrid model into your own business. Now, some people will say, look, in the way they said, we're not going to become online agents. But interestingly enough, over the course of just a few years, they have pretty much adopted all of the technology that they said, oh, that's what the online agents do. We don't do that. We're all about personal service. And they just needed a bit of distance between it to be able to adopt it. So I think there's a really interesting the way that the industry is shaping in terms of these corporates and smaller industries, but also the model itself is going to just be fascinating over the next 3 to 5 years.
It is fascinating. And that sort of ties into your old mate, Simon Bradbury, also spoke very highly of Katie this week, but he spoke, he had an article out in the Property Industry Eye.
Oh, sorry, yes.
All about why you should love your proptech providers a little bit more.
Well, he's always again. I'm not sure whether I'm breaking confidentiality here, but at the old AC meetings we used to have around RAN, it was like, oh, here's Simon, here's the biggest cheerleader of the portals, but Simon's always been absolutely consistent in terms of being supportive to the, for those businesses and suppliers, that do help him out, that he should do the same back to them. And I've, back in my day, I think I noticed that the most forward-thinking agents realize in a small B2B industry like us, yes, all of these businesses should be delivering to you anyway, but actually having a really, really good relationship with them does take it onto another level. And people like Simon Woodcock, back in the early days, we got an interview with him for Kerfuffle, and we were asking people their advice around suppliers. He says every 6 months, take them out to lunch, or let's be honest, let them take you out to lunch, and genuinely make sure that they feel they're part of your business. I know from my own point of view, as you know, David, famously, wasn't very good at sales, never been an estate agent, didn't know technology. So I should have been
found himself in proptech.
Yeah, I should have been sacked every day for at least the first 10 years. And it was only when I stopped aping what I thought other people should do and actually really started empathizing and really getting on with the agents and being part of their businesses. And I can tell you, I would go out of my way exponentially to make their experience of Repeat an absolute success, because I so wanted to be able to be the person that ran up to them at the awards or whatever else they'd done and said,
I think in fairness to you, I think the people that remember your relationship with them as a supplier will remember the lunches. They'll remember the relationship element of it. I've not done
it right if they remember the lunches.
They might not remember the fact that they're still waiting for Jet to bring out an accounts module. To this day, he promised me.
I think you've just made me a bad leaver, you absolute bitch.
No, I didn't. It's still a fantastic product. But I think what's interesting, and you know what? Let's go back into that. Let's unpack this properly. Taking Repeat as an example, post-Whale Repeat and PayProp, these are businesses that very much understand. And we were down with PayProp a few months ago. We met some of their biggest fans are obviously their agents. The thing that all of these companies and a lot of suppliers have finally understood is that the personal relationship that you have with an agent does matter. Yes. That these cheerleaders, you need them, but that I think that what we all understand, particularly walking away from a conference, is that agents hate being sold to, but they're an entirely different animal if you can help them, if you can build that relationship with them, if you can sit down and try and understand them a little bit. And I dare say we as agents always used to take that approach that the suppliers were leeches and they were just trying to get something off us, and that's not the case anymore either.
I think I agree with that, absolutely everything there. And Simon's point about that was, and I say it all the time, isn't it, the difference between just being a supplier to and a partner with, again, is massive, and I love what Sophie said there. That absolutely does make.
Now this is why she's going to be president. You see, because
we've already done it. It's a done deal now. Sorry to everyone else who was in the race, but that's the kerfuffle bounce.
I always like building relationships with our prop tech providers. It means we can influence the tech as it develops and help them develop to fit what we need as practitioners. We are a team, and they're an extension of our business. And I think that is honestly, that is the key to making that relationship work.
It's absolutely true, isn't it? Yeah, it's going the extra yard for it as well. Who was that up there as well? I couldn't agree more with that, Mr. Hollingrake. That's PM. Obviously, he's got to wait 10 years before he can get back to do that, but I will back that at the appropriate time as well. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think that the relationship. I do look at the conferences to see what's happening out there and who's there, and particularly the quality of the conversations that they're having. And I do see more and more that the suppliers understand that satisfied customers, and this is what we talk about all day and all night. And it's the same in agency. Reviews, but it's reputation, but it's relationships. That's what.
And look, it's going back to that. We're releasing that this week, aren't we? The Mind Your Own Business study, which is the one we've been running for the last few months around how people feel about reviews, reputation. But the core element is all of that is the basic about, do you believe that word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of advertising? It's just obviously almost everybody says yes. That's what reviews are about. That's what testimonials are about. That's what, when you do it more empirically, that's what a case study is about. And what I love about also what Sophie goes on to say here as well is it's that point that's really important. Everyone, even though a lot of the prop tech businesses are quite small, agents get very frustrated because they don't feel they have any ability to influence the way that that product is developing unless they really very beginning.
Do you know what? I think that's the point that you make is really relevant. Simon Bradbury was a little bit cheeky because he put Rightmove in the headline of that article because he knew it was going to get people. Why you should love your suppliers, including Rightmove or whatever it was. But I think the truth is that with Rightmove and love them or hate them, I think there was the feeling that you had no choice. That also that the tech wasn't going to necessarily develop according to your needs. It was just to what suited them and in terms of advertising and so on. However, I also feel that the people at Rightmove are listening more than they used to. And I was very vocal back in the day about that. And I think that it's whenever somebody feels like they don't have a choice and they're being strong-armed into something is when I think that they protest the most. And I think the rest of the time where they feel that they're included, where they can shape the tech, where the supplier is listening to them, it's a win-win for everybody, surely.
It's not. I'm particularly biased because obviously he's a mate, but Christian Bolshan is obviously head of lettings over there, and he takes such a proactive approach in terms of listening to people. And again, going back to Miles. Miles would never. He would never kowtow. He would never, like me, just agree with you, whatever you're saying. But he would very firmly put forward their point of view. But he would always have a conversation.
Oh, he would. He was always approachable. But I do like you mentioned Christian there. I like talking to Christian about things that that affect the industry, but also at Rightmove, because there's a sense that this is a man that understands it from the coalface of sort of helping smaller agencies build up their lettings and referencing all over those years. He had his finger in many agencies, if you like, but he's also not somebody who dresses it up. So I don't think he could toe a party political line if he had to. I think he's somebody that always speaks his mind, and I think that he will take feedback back, and in some cases I've seen that implemented. So it's great.
Yeah. I suppose one final thing on that conversation. I suppose it's quite easy for some of the people who are at the corporates to still shout about Rightmove, but when they're paying a markedly different rate to everybody out there. Because really, if to be very honest, they have a strategic advantage before they've opened the door in the mornings, haven't they? And let's do what we do so brilliantly. Let's wind it all the way back. You know, if you can layer some of those supplier deals in the way that the Guild do, or the way that we want to do it, RAN and everything else there, and you've got a better deal than being outside, you know, than being just an independent agent. That's got to be a positive for those members.
I think that competition as well has changed attitudes. So where you've got, in most supplier categories, you've got loads and loads of competition. So if you need a deposit replacement service, there's 2 or 3 of them. If you now need something that handles your payments, there's 2 or 3 services that can do that. CRMs, well, you're about to release another ultimate guide to CRMs, and that is going to have, you know, upwards of, I don't know, I'll lose count now, but it could be 12, 15, 20 in there.
And I do, and I'm supposed to be Mr. CRM. So
but I guess what I'm saying is, I think that competition always keeps these people on their toes and teaches them the importance of those fanatic fans, if you like, and personal relationships and loyalty. And I think what's interesting is when it comes to Rightmove, there was always a sense that they had no competition, that Zoopla were there, but they were really just that little dog snapping at their heels. Whereas I think OTM and CoStar clearing their throats a little bit has actually made people sit up and listen.
And look, you've actually seen Zoopla popping back as well, haven't they? They're really starting to really do a lot more than they've done for years in terms of the PR side of things. I think you're right. I think, look, let's be really honest, it hasn't seen like the press statements you'd seen from the likes of Zoopla and OTM before the acquisition had really not been about, you know, talking about rivaling Rightmove as a portal. They were talking about doing some very other clever stuff. Of course, you know, Zoopla has obviously also in all of the CRMs. You know, you'd obviously had OTM that are building really, really close relationship deals with the likes of Sprift and everything else there, Techlet and everything else. They had gone down different routes, probably because they had to do that. I think overnight, as we've seen somebody say, you know, hold my pint, CoStar come in 5 times the valuation of Rightmove and say everything changes from this moment on. And I think we're starting to see that, aren't we?
Are you saying that money changes everybody's lives?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's everything. I said
but it's certainly easier with money than without it. That's one thing we've learned.
It certainly is, yeah. Bartering your way out of Wetherspoons is never the easiest route. Yeah, okay, cool. So I think so we're looking at obviously a nice week ahead of us. Just to finish off as well, obviously we spoke about Agents Giving. How is, obviously we're doing the Spice Boys, rivaling the Spice Boys.
You are.
Obviously I've set you free. I know I had to because I was holding you back. How is the Chris Watkins routine coming along?
Well, do you know what? The Chris Watkins experience starts with the beard.
Yep, it's good.
I have been drinking more pints of stout than I normally do.
Have you joined the Masons?
I've not yet joined the Masons, brother, but I will do. I did. Do you know what I did do this morning? And I never do it. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm just not into stats. I listened to the Watkins Weekly Stats Show. Yeah. And don't do that. Don't do it whilst you're driving, by the way. It's not good. Not good. But for me, stats don't tickle my schmechel at all in any way. But I know that a lot of people put a lot of stock in them. But it's interesting, I suppose. There's a place for it.
Gotta be there, isn't it? Cool.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm wishing you all, please do. This is a warning. Play safe this week at PM1. I know that your after party, I think, is on a boat.
It's on a boat. I've literally got the pirate hat ready. PropTech Pirate will be there.
I haven't got a ticket to the after show party because I'm too tight to buy one. So
I'm like a ticket tower. Like
have you got some? I'm gonna hook me up.
I've got somebody else who's got one, and they reckon they can make.
Well, I hope it's a Titanic success.
Wow!
And on that nautical note,
Excellent. Oh, and also give a shout out. We've got to go and see Megan. They're doing the superhero things with our friends at.
The breakout session. Yeah, they're doing with PVS.
Because I've been told I had to say that on pain of.
Well, it actually genuinely sounds like one of the breakout sessions to be in for most agents. I think it's going to be fun.
No lycra policy. I will be there. What is there? I suppose all superheroes wear lycra. Oh, yet again, I've been brilliant. Didn't even realise it.
You would be a superhero. What would be your superpower?
Pee-wee.
Sorry?
Pee-wee.
Pee-wee.
I thought you were asking what my name was as superhero.
Okay, no. So your superhero name is Pee-wee. What's your superpower?
I just make people feel good about themselves. Normally, when they look at me.
Amazing.
Right.
Have a wonderful week. See you all at PM1.
Have a good one. Bye. Love you all. Thanks for commenting.